Well, welcome everybody. I see that we have some brave people in the room. The storms, they are coming. No, I'm kidding. But there are. I even got an email earlier from somebody apologizing to me for not being able to make it. And I thought that was the nicest thing. Usually they just don't show up. This one was, hey Julian, sorry I'm not going to be able to make it. Blah blah blah. But I'll do everything I can to be there at your next meeting. And I'm going, well, that was nice of somebody to take that time out to do that. When G never does that, when he tells me he's coming and then he doesn't show up.
Julian.
Yeah, you did. Yes, you did. Or you usually tell me, yeah, I'm in the office or I'm in front of the chair. Well, thank you for coming. For those of you who did, we've got a good show. I call it a show because I'm part of the show. I'm kind of a clown, and then the serious people come on after me. But we've got a guest speaker tonight, which I think will be very, very enlightening for all of us. And I have never heard him speak, but I've heard nothing but great things about him, and so I understand he's also quite entertaining. Wanted to take care of a couple of little housekeeping things. So I keep getting questions about K-1s. Anybody here, like me, hasn't filed their taxes yet? Filed your extension, but not your taxes, right? Hope you made your tax payment, though. You can't postpone that one. Asking for K-1s. The K-1s can be found on the IMS website. So if you go through your portal, you can find it. And they were out we started sending out the first batch between, I think it was like February 15th, 16th. And the last one was uploaded about March 10th. So they're all there. This year we did not have to do any restating, so we're all good. And if you have any problems finding yours, if you need it, shoot me or Garrett an email. We'll take care of it for you. But you can find it, and I'll tell you the best way to find it is when you, on the portal, go to your communications or your emails, and you'll see them. It's always look for, like I said, the dates are going to be February to March. If you look for your communications around that time frame, you'll be able to find them. And then you can just download them. No problem there. Let's see, Garrett, anything come to mind that we've been getting questions on this last couple of weeks? Okay, well, I'll talk a little bit. Or Darwin, you want to talk a little bit about them? I'll have you come up, but if you want to talk about them, or I can handle them. No. Vicky, how about you? Vicky.
It's okay, keep going.
All right. Anyway, so we also have a couple of little updates. We had a few questions this week again, and it's only Tuesday on our Iron Ranch. So we are waiting on the appraisal, correct? Why don't you take it from here then?
Well, you were going to talk about the mark.
Okay, I'll talk about the mark. Okay, so the mark, for those of you who are investing in the mark and have or have an interest in it, I had a meeting last Friday, not this past Friday, 2 Fridays ago, with the city's manager of the city of Weatherford and the mayor and the sellers of the property. So we had a little powwow to present. As you well know, if you have been following the mark, we were going to go the route of a PFC structure. Well, the state legislature closed their business on the 29th of May, and in doing so, they passed 4 new bills. I don't know whether the governor has signed them yet, but they all passed, and they have radically changed these structures, making them a lot more difficult to put in place. And where before the housing authorities had unilateral say in putting these things in place, they had to ask no one. They didn't have to ask the city, the school district, none of the taxing authorities. That's been done away with, and I could go on and bore you about some of these things. Suffice it to say, because of it, we had to shift our approach, and that's why I had to meet with the city, met with them, and put our new proposal in front of them. They wanted some additional information that they got last Friday, and so we're now, I guess as the old saying goes, the ball is in their court, and we're waiting on their final, I won't say their final, on which way they want to go. So we're hoping they're just going to say, yeah, we love it, ready to go with it. But I suspect the way municipalities work, they're going to say, give us some time to conduct our own due diligence, and we'll get back with you. And as you know, the wheels of government very slowly moving. It could be a week, it could be 10 days, who knows? But stay tuned, we'll let you know about that. You want to do Iron Ranch?
Sure.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know who this gentleman is, what is your name?
Joe.
Joe. Okay. So take it away, Joe.
Hello. Okay. So, like you said, on the mark, we're still working on that. We're still hopeful for that whole thing. However, like you said, a lot of challenges. We've never had to deal with cities and states changing laws in the middle of a transaction. So thank you for your patience on that part of it. That is the mark. So we're still working on that, still doing it. We don't know where it's going to land. However, we are still pushing forward because it's still a great deal.
And we also did run into a couple of headwinds that we could somehow would have anticipated, but not to the degree. One of them was, and this is good for anybody buying real estate, the Parker County Central Appraisal District came back, and their assessment moved the proposed tax bill from roughly $975 to almost $2 million. So you can imagine what that did to the assessed value. And then number two, as you may or may not know, but lately insurance carriers just do not want to do business in Texas or in California for that matter. I don't know if you saw State Farm has pulled out of California, and they have taken what we were underwriting just about all across our portfolio between $750 to $850 a unit for insurance premiums, as high as $1,500 for, and imagine on a 355 unit property. That's a big jump to two. Well, definitely the tax bill is the largest line item, but when you get hit with that kind of an increase on your insurance premiums, outrageous. So that kind of provided yet another headwind for us. Now take it away.
Just to expand on that, I feel the need to do that, to give some comparison. 3 years ago, we were underwriting insurance at $350 per unit. $350. Now it's between $1,000 and $1,500 a unit. Just insane, killing the deals. On the mark, their property insurance was $171,000 last year. Their new quote is $348,000. Our bids are even higher than that we're getting. So we're looking at assuming their contract. So when you go up $200,000 at a 5 cap, that lowers the value of the property. Let's see here, $4 million. And then the property taxes going from $975 to what we think would go to about $1.5 million. $500,000 lowers the value by $10 million. Okay, so we have to make up for that with having the PFC or PCA or PHA, whatever the hell it is now, for this new program to be able to have that make sense to work. So we're still working on that one. We've also got another property we're working on in Denton, and a couple more that we're underwriting to still look at things. We're also looking at, I did some analysis on properties in Tennessee today. That's the mark, and some of those. We've got Iron Ranch. We broke ground on that. We did our ceremonial groundbreaking. You can see some of the pictures there. And so when they actually get all the big equipment out there, we'll be able to go and play on some of that equipment. And that'll be fun when we do that. And we are in the process of, the lender has the application. They're doing their background checks. They're doing their appraisal, which should be in any time. They did a phase 1. We've already done a phase 1 and a phase 2. So that'll all be clean. And we're looking technically at a real groundbreaking August 1st. As far as the actual time when the loans close and everything's going and moving ahead. And that one, and we're already about 30% pre-leased on that deal. And we're looking at land for more of these, not just here, but in DFW, 4 or 5 more locations, and then expanding that to a lot of other markets. And the next guy we're going to introduce is the reason that really you're here. And I met Adam, I heard him speak, and spectacular speaker. And I will say he expanded my mind quite a bit. And the biggest part of that for me was looking at how to grow. When we grow, it's by buying a new property. The last couple of years, we've been net sellers, so we've actually shrunk as a company. And while it was by design, we need to grow faster. So he gave me the inspiration on how to level everybody up. I wanted to level Brian Hawley up into business development. I wanted to level Vicky up to take over the management side. Brian decided he didn't want to do that and would rather retire, and Vicky moved up. But I don't know whether we put it out into the ether or whatever else, that we said, okay, we want to take over more management and grow that way. And we've taken over 4 properties for third-party management from a contractor that builds apartments all over the country. So we're getting our foot in the door with him on their properties here in DFW, and would also give us a foothold for a lot of other markets to be able to grow into. So all of this came from just listening to this gentleman for a very short period of time. And I don't know how much of his background he's going to go into, but the biggest thing that impressed me on that, his training, has anybody heard of Jack Welch? Have you heard of him? Okay. Impressive? Okay. That's where his training came from. So welcome, Adam. Come on up, Adam Coffey.
Well, hey.
And he'll be more exciting than either one of us.
Thank you. Well, it's good to be here. I'm glad somebody wasn't afraid of a little thunder and lightning and hail. So good to see everybody sitting here today. So I will cover a little bit about my background just to keep it interesting. So first of all, I'm a veteran of the U.S. Army. We got any veterans in the house? Matter of fact, I am not a Texan by birth, so please forgive me for those of you who are. But I did become a Texan in the 1980s when I was stationed at Fort Hood, and my son lives down in Austin, and he amazes all his friends because he was born at Fort Hood, so he gets to run around with one of them license plates that says Native Texan, and it pisses all his friends off, but he's a real Native Texan. So I tell people, military taught me something about discipline, teamwork, and leadership. And I went in the service right out of high school. So I was 17 years old. I had to have permission from my parents. I'd just graduated high school, wasn't feeling like wanting to go to college. If you look back at pictures of me when I was like 10 years old, I'm wearing fatigues and playing in the woods with BB guns. And I was a member of the NRA, and I was shooting, as a little kid. So military, it was very informative. It was a great base for me for the rest of my life. And I started so low on the totem pole, I'd look up and I'd see bubble gum on the bottom of somebody else's shoes. And I think that starting there had a huge impact on my career. Kind of another thing I tell people, engineering background after the service. Engineering made me a meticulous planner. I'm a pilot. I'm a meticulous planner. I spend 3 hours rubbing on my airplane for about every hour I'd spend in the air, and you just don't take off unless you've spent a lot of time figuring out where you're going, what the weather en route is, what the winds aloft are, what your alternates are. A lot of work that goes in. So if you ask my wife, she'd tell you, I'm an anal, retentive, strategic planner. Always a plan in place. I'll blame that on engineering. Third thing I tell people is GE. So I spent 10 years at GE. I call it the Camelot era of GE. So tech doesn't exist yet. Steve Jobs is still playing in his garage. Well, actually, he's not. I think he's been fired at least once by now. But I'm there for Jack's last 10 years. And it was the magical time. So tech doesn't exist. Internet is kind of a nascent thing that the government uses and colleges use, but not really used broadly by the public. It's the world's largest company. Number 1 on the Fortune 500 list. It is the oldest and the original Dow company still on the stock exchange. And under Jack's leadership, this company is doubling in size every 3 years. Its stock is splitting every 3 years. I thought as a young man, I get my stock options. I just thought money rained from the sky every 3 years. Just piles of money would fall out of the clouds. And I thought, boy, what a great time to be alive. So GE taught me how to run a business. Next up, CEO for 21 years. So I built 3 companies for 9 different private equity sponsors. I bought 58 companies, put them together. I have billions of dollars in exits. I have 2 number 1 best-selling books. Just finished my 3rd one literally this weekend, so it's off to the editor this morning. Look for it this fall. It's called Empire Builder. And I spent 15 years teaching at major universities. I can't use names. They don't like it when I use names, but at executive MBA programs. And I was loving teaching, writing my books, doing my giving back. At the same time, I was starting to get bored being a CEO. And so I figured out, I'm like, it's time for a pivot. How can I kind of switch these things around and become paid for speaking, paid for writing my books, paid for educating, and how can I help multiple companies at a time? Because that's really what I wanted to do. Instead of just running one, I wanted to impact multiple companies at a time. So I've done that, I've made that pivot, but it's been fun, been a fun ride. I've had a lot of little sub-careers in there, and I'm gonna wander all over the place. And I'm doing that because we got a diverse crowd here. And the first thing I'll tell you is I'm not an expert real estate investor. I'm a business guy. I've run billion-dollar real estate portfolios as a part of some of the companies that I've built, but I'm not a real estate guy. So 21 years as a CEO, 3 national companies, sold them 9 times, billions of dollars in exits, and have built billion-dollar businesses. So let me just look back now and say, what have I learned? What are the lessons that I've learned? First thing I'll tell you is that culture and revenue are correlated. Absolutely correlated. I think in today's world, people are more accepting of that. But back when I started my CEO career, it was because I was a servant leader in the military. The military taught people how to be a servant leader. We didn't have a title for it until just recently, but that is what the military kind of cranked out. So lead from the trenches, take the hill, follow me. So servant leader, I've learned very quickly, especially most of the companies I ran were service businesses. So ladies, please don't take this wrong. It's not to sound sexist. Guys, trucks, broken stuff. Guys, trucks, building things. Guys, trucks, installing things. Engineers, designing stuff, manufacturing, anything but real estate, really, when you think about it. And what I learned was if you can't store your company's product in a box and put it on a shelf, your product is actually people. And so I connected the dots really early. If I wanted to, I come in as a CEO, don't tell my shareholders, don't tell my boards of directors, I can't manage revenue. I start at the bottom. I start with culture. If I focus on culture, I get an engaged workforce. Engaged workforce takes care of customers. Customers give us more stuff to do. Revenue rains from the skies. That's always been my belief, my secret formula. In today's world, it is really hard to get people to want to work for a living. It's hard to fill jobs. It's hard to get people. And I learned early on, if I build a company with a cool culture, I don't have a problem finding people. People find me. So that's what I do. I have one goal for employees anytime I walk into a company. Every company I ran had been in business for 40 years before I got there. Some were public companies taken private. Others were family office-owned businesses. All different kinds of permeations. One company that I ran, I came in, it was a public company taken private, SEC investigations, DOJ criminal criminal charges pending on leadership teams who just got in trouble. I've seen some really ugly turnarounds in my day. And in every case, I was able to take a sleepy company that was kind of doing nothing and get it to grow like this. Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, talks about the flywheel effect. I call it bending the growth curve. But able to build empires out of companies, and always when I started, one goal for employees. Again, remember, employees are my product. I want to create an environment where you can spend your entire career in one place. And I'm a simple guy, and to do that, you only got to do 4 things. My 4-legged stool. Pay a fair wage in today's world, or you will lose talent. Number 1. Number 2, got to have great benefits, because we all get old and fall apart. I look out the eyes of a 21-year-old, and there's a 58-year-old Gomer looking back at me now. I hurt in places that I didn't know existed 20 years ago. And mama wants good health care. In any company that I have ever run, I make the same choices that the guys in the plant who's got the broom sweeping, the janitor. I make the same decisions they do. I don't have a Cadillac plan for executives. I got one plan. And if mama wants good health care, then by God, everybody gets good health care, because that's how you do it. Second leg. Third leg, got to have a strong retirement plan. You can tell if a company cares about its employees by looking at its 401k. So you got some people out there who say, geez, I'm going to do $0.25 on a dollar for 8%, because I know none of my employees are going to contribute 8%, and it ain't going to cost me too much money if I do it that way. I walk into a company, first thing I do is dollar for dollar. Dollar for dollar for 3, because I know that my working class people are barely making it. And they can't afford to save 8%. I'm not checking a damn box. I'm making sure that when they get old, they got enough money to retire and to help subsidize Social Security. So I do that. And most importantly, in this 4-legged stool is the last one. I have to create opportunity for growth. If I want employees to stay for their entire career, I got to give them a career path. Growth does that. Companies that are growing fast create new jobs. They create opportunities. I invest in people. And the result of that is I get a great culture. When you're hiring key talent in any of your businesses today, I'll tell you that don't hire for the position you have in the company you have today. Hire for the company you're going to be in 5 years. I grow companies at a clip of better than 30% a year. They double in size in 2.8 years. They triple in size in 3.4 years. They quadruple in size in just over 5 years. And if you want to not outgrow talent in key leadership positions, I overhire. I hire people who know what my company's going to look like in 5 years, people that can still roll up their shirt sleeves, reach down, and help us get there. But then that talent can last with me for at least 10 years. So they're fighting below their weight class the first 5, and then I catch up to their weight class, and then for the next 5, I'm now pushing them to new heights. So when you're hiring in today's world, overhire, hire for the company you'll be in 5 years. Now, also, again, I'm going to wander. Leadership versus management. Learn that lesson early in life. Managers handle the affairs of a company. They handle things. Leaders inspire people, and they get people to achieve new heights that they've never achieved before. So I grabbed 2 examples from modern history, I'll call it. I pick one from each side, so that way no one can say I'm political, although I'm a conservative Republican and Ronald Reagan is my hero. But aside from that, here are the 2 people in my lifetime who could command a stage, who could absolutely get a generation to do something, to articulate a vision and get them to follow. Think about Barack Obama for a second. What did Barack Obama sell us? Hope. What the hell is hope? Can you put hope in a box? Can you put it on a shelf? No. This man was a community activist who then was for 18 months, was a senator. He ran for office for 12 of those 18 months, and yet he went all the way to the top on hope because he could articulate a vision and he could get people to aspire to want to do something. He hadn't even taken office and he won a Nobel Peace Prize. Imagine that. Pretty good. That's a strong box of hope. And so I tell people, and I think back of Ronald Reagan, and I use video clips sometimes when I'm doing this, and there's a debate, if anybody is old enough to remember like I am, where he's taking on Walter Mondale, and the moderator's bringing up the fact that he's the oldest president there's ever been. And he tells the moderator in the world, don't worry, I won't hold my opponent's youthful inexperience against him. And the entire world laughed. People who remember his speech at the Brandenburg Gate at the BAM or in Germany, where he's like, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. These were two people who could inspire. If you're going to build an empire, if you're going to build $1 billion business like I have multiple times, you need to learn how to inspire people. And if you can't, hire somebody who can. And then you be Oz, the guy behind the curtain sitting in the back. My strategy anywhere I go, I tell people leadership attitude matters. I tell people in my companies, you cannot have a bad day. I don't give a damn what happened in your life yesterday. When you come to work, you don't have bad days because our product is our people, and you don't get to take out your bad days on our product. Be a data-driven company. Don't be a guy who sticks his finger up in the air and says, yeah, that's what we're going to do because it feels right. Use data. Be data-driven in every decision that you make, in everything that you do. Invest in technology to drive productivity. I'm a transparent guy. I might have 3,000 employees in a company. I hold a town hall. I get 1,000 of them to show up. Guys in trucks pull over, kick their feet up, sit back for 15, 20 minutes, listen to the old man. Tell them what's going on. Every employee in every company I've ever run knows what our revenue is. They know what our earnings is. I talk to them about EBITDA. They don't know what the hell EBITDA is, but by God, they know how much of it we got. I'm transparent unless there's an NDA signed. So be transparent. Measure success, celebrate success, all those good things. Switch gears now a little bit. And I'm going to tell you how I think about investing, how I choose the companies that I build, how I choose the companies that I acquire, how I build empires. Everybody know who this old guy is? Well, once upon a time, I heard him say these words, never invest in something you don't understand, right? Now, that's a lot of negativity. Never and don't understand. I like to say it just a little bit differently. Invest in what you know. That's what I like to do. So after I heard Warren say this, I tried an experiment. So I went out and I said, what do I know? Well, here's what I know. I invested $1,000 or $100,000 in each of these 5 companies. All my devices were Apple. How many people in here are holding an Apple, have an Apple device somewhere in your house? Raise your hand. Okay, I've been doing a spot poll like this for the last 15 years, and I've got a lot of marketing data. 90% of the educated world has an Apple device. Now let me ask you something else. For those of you who have an Apple device, how many of you somewhere in your house, in your closet, still have the empty box the Apple device came in? Raise your hand. Another 90% of the educated world that has an Apple device still has that empty box sitting in a closet somewhere. That's amazing. And so I knew this early on. Apple was one of my key investments. Amazon was coming to my house every damn day, and they were going to all my neighbors' houses, multiple times a day. Hell, they got the UPS guy, the FedEx lady, and they got the USPS person. Everybody's dropping off boxes at my house. I don't go to stores anymore unless I have to. Matter of fact, if you live where I live in Westlake in Vaquero, I'm like about 5 minutes from their big warehouse distribution point. If I'm like working on a project around the house and the time it takes me to go to South Lake to go to Home Depot, I can order it on Amazon and it shows up in my mailbox. It's so fast. So then I had, okay, every business on the planet uses Microsoft applications. Everyone's got Gmail. I go to Home Depot all the time because I'm always working on something. That's what I knew. I put $100,000 into each one of those 5 companies. Guess what happened? Guess what my returns were? $2.5 million, a 5 times multiple of invested capital. Matter of fact, to this day, that $100,000 I put in Apple, single biggest return in my entire portfolio. Because you just proved it. 90% of us on the planet. You know, the people who don't have an Apple device, how many have an Android device? You must be engineers or technical people, right? Because it's better. Apple didn't care that it's better. They don't have to be better. They can sell an extra generation of product to the 90 million people who keep their empty boxes. And those of you who don't keep the empty box, how many people got a Dell computer box in your closet? Raise your hand. Oh my God, we've got a few. That's like the biggest response I've ever seen. You must be the people who think when I sell it on eBay in 3 years, I'll get more money for it because I have a box, right? So $2.5 million. So I took him at his heart. Invest in what you know. So what do I look for? If it's a real estate business, people need a place to live. Single family homes, apartments, things like that. People used to need a place to work. Going to be a lot of fun seeing what happens when all this commercial real estate gets refied at the end of the month. Anybody seen what's going on in San Francisco lately? Last 48 hours, the 2 largest hotels in the city turned over the keys to the lenders and said, peace, we're out. Not going to pay the debt anymore. Largest mall in San Francisco just turned over the keys to the bank. Sorry, we're out. Peace. Good luck. So, big red light for me on commercial properties. People still kind of need a place to shop, eat. Kind of. Strip malls. Service companies. I need my roof fixed. I want my TV hung. I need a plumber. I need my lawn cut. I need clean drinking water. I want my laundry done. Product. I want a new outfit. I want accessories for my truck. My pet needs food. I need blades for my razor. What am I trying to tell you here? Invest in what I know. What I look for in a business. It has to service needs, not wants. There are some people out there like Louis Vuitton and some of the really high-end brands that do really well in bad economies. But when I'm buying companies and putting them together and I got dudes and trucks doing things, I want it to be a need, not a want. It's fundamental. My perfect business is focused on needs. Why? Because businesses go through cycles. And in a downturn, if you're focused on wants, your customers can say, I'm not going to make that expenditure today. I'm not going to make it tomorrow. I may not make it for another year or 2 or ever again. But if it's a need, at some level, they still have to make that expenditure. And so peak to trough, how far companies fall in a recession and how long it takes them to recover is a whole lot shorter when a company is focused on needs versus wants, and Wall Street loves companies that focus on needs. Everything else is called a cyclical company. And the cyclicals, don't do well in recessions. So I focus on needs, not wants. What I look for in a service business. I call it the phone book test. Everybody in here is old enough to remember what the hell a phone book is, right? Okay. If I can go to 40 cities and I can look in the back of 40 phone books and I can go to dry cleaning or landscape maintenance or electricians and I see different names in every city, I know I got a highly fragmented market, and that's key because I'm going to buy a bunch of companies and I'm going to put them together. I'm going to do something called a buy and build. And I need that fragmentation so that the prices on the smaller companies I buy stay low. There's too many of them. There's not enough buyers. Boomers are retiring by the thousands every day, and there aren't enough buyers for all these businesses. I get them low. But as I put them together, I become rare and I get bigger multiples. And if I'm focused on needs in a service business, I pass the phone book test, I'm going to make a lot of money on arbitrage. The difference between the price I pay for all of them versus the price I sell them all at. In real estate, I tell people you need to be focused on one area or one type. Can't be all over the map. You need to build up expertise when you're starting out in real estate investing. You can get hurt. So you invest close to home, areas that you know. You invest in one type of product and you get to know that one type of product. It's single family home rentals. It's multifamily housing rentals. One of the buildings or one of the empires that I built was $1 billion commercial laundry company that had common area laundry rooms in 70,000 apartment complexes across North America. So I'm all around real estate. I've just never been a real estate guy. I've never been a Darwin. But I think that people need to focus on one type when they're getting going. I look on the wall here. What do I see? I see one type. Most of these are all in the same town. A lot of tribal knowledge built up in Darwin's head. Product-based business has to have high margin. I don't want to manufacture it. I want somebody else to manufacture it. I want someone else to inventory it. I want someone else to drop ship it. Think about all these weird things going on in the world. The world's largest renter of rooms owns no rooms. Airbnb. Right? I'm on the board of a large roofing company. We don't lay any roofs. We subcontract everything. I'm on the board of a really large flooring company. We don't lay any floors. So, manufacturing light, inventory light. I look for families of products that service a recurrent need, a group of stuff that people need to have and they want to have. And when they go buy one, they go buy 5 or 6 other things. Creates a lot of ancillary revenue streams. So that's what I focus on that. Buy or build. We can start from scratch or we can buy pre-existing businesses when we're building empires and getting started. I like to start by buying something. If I'm building from zero, I have a lot of risk. If I buy something, I have a history of revenue and earnings, of customer base. I can look at financials. I can analyze whether or not it's a good company for me to launch an empire from. So I'm usually looking to buy something already. Where do I find them? Well, here's 3 places where you can go. These aren't cheap. Grata is my favorite, grata.com, but it'll cost you $10,000 a year to get a license for Grata. But it's a good platform. And if I'm looking for companies in an industry, I can go here and I can give it, think of it as like Google on steroids for people who want to buy stuff, businesses. It'll tell me who owns it, how big it is, what its revenue is, what's their email address. It'll give me any publicly available information that they can gather with their little bots that are crawling around the internet and collecting data on companies. So that's my number one source I like to use. How do you pay for a company? Well, cash, commercial banks, SBA, seller rollover equity, seller financing. I once bought an insurance agency. It had $4 million of revenue, $1.7 million of earnings. We bought it for $4 million. I got it cheap, but it was a good business. And so we made equity $1 million. This was for my brother, by the way. So my brother ran it for 15 years, but he and I went out and brought in a few friends and we put together $1 million for equity. I borrowed $2 million from a family office and I borrowed $1 million from the seller. Held back a note at 10%. The family office gave us the money at 10%. The cash flow from the business paid it off in less than 4 years. And then for the next 15, we distributed 1.7 to 2.5 to ourselves for the next 15 years. And then we sold it for $12 million. My brother was getting old. He wanted to retire. So I let him do it. So many different ways. Never let money be a reason you don't do something, because there's a ton of money out there and it's easy to get at once you know how. I'm doing a lot of cashless mergers right now. Interest rates are high. I'll get 10 people in a room and it's like, I just did this recently. And I'll talk to them about the benefits of putting 10 small companies together to create one big one that we're then going to turn around and sell to a private equity firm. And we're going to get a much higher multiple by putting these businesses together. And we'll talk about that. And by the time I'm done, I got 10 people signing over their businesses, signing over control and saying, yeah, Adam, let's do this. There's a lot of activity going on around the world in terms of cashless mergers. We've got 2 guys who are in their 70s who each have a business with about $5 million of earnings. And I was talking to one, he's my client, and Adam, I want to maximize the potential of my business, and then I want you to help me sell it. Okay, no problem, do this every day. And I asked him, do you have any friends like you? Yes. I got a buddy, he's also in his 70s. He and I have been in the same industry for the last 40 years, and he wants to sell too. How big is he? He's about 5 million EBITDA too. Great. Guess what? Your business alone sells for 8 times. I'll bring you a check for 40 million. That's how much your business is worth. But guess what? If I put your business together with your friend's business, it sells for 12 times. 10 million of EBITDA at 12 times is 120 million. You now get 60 million instead of 40, a 50% increase in your retirement plan, and you don't have to do anything other than we just put these 2 companies together and go sell them. All kinds of creative ways to put company deals together in today's world. So, scary statistics for entrepreneurs. 33 million small businesses in America today. 99.9% of all companies in the country fall in this category, right? 500 employees or less. That's how the SBA defines small business. Only 7% get to $1 million. Why the hell is that? Of the people that get to $1 million, only 4% of those get to 10 million. You know what? There are only 3,000 companies on the planet with $1 billion of revenue. 2,000 are public, 1,000 are private. Why the hell is it so hard to be successful in business? Why do all these people fail? Only 40% are profitable, 50% are gone within 5 years. Why can't anybody get this right? I'm going to tell you why. It's all about unit level economics. So on Monday, on Memorial Day, I flew to Greenwich, Connecticut, and I spent the day with 2 billionaires. And they own a household name company that everybody in this room knows, and they're trying to get me to be the CEO. I'm like, guys, I retired. I'm no longer a CEO. I'm now a consultant, blah, blah, blah. And they're talking to me about their $6 billion company, and they're like, Adam, fix this thing. I've had 4 CEOs in the last 5 years, and no one seems to be able to fix this. How would you attack this? I'm like, I don't need to fix a $6 billion company. I need to fix 1 truck, 1 guy, 1 service call. I fix that, I'll fix the $6 billion company. People get it wrong because they don't focus on unit level economics. You got to get a company working small before you make it big. I can't tell you how many entrepreneurs in the world have told me this. Adam, once I get bigger, I'll figure out how to make money. Wrong answer. If you can't make the first 100,000 work, if you can't make the first million work, you aren't building $1 billion business. But if you can make the first 100,000 work, if you can peel the onion back to the unit level economics on the operating part of the business, not the capital part, not the profit part, if you can just focus on getting the unit level economics right small, then you've got something that's with mathematical certainty, I can make $1 billion business. I'm creating a math formula because I'm an engineer who's got anal retentive strategic planning, and Jack taught me how to do this. Operating margins are where all businesses make it or break it. It's not SG&A, it's all about operating expenses. Operating margin minus SG&A must equal my target profit. I actually think about it in a different way. How well I run the business minus my target profit equals what I can spend to run the company. So SG&A for me becomes an afterthought. I want profit, and I've got an operating unit, and the difference between those two is what SG&A gets to be. And that's why everybody goes south. So think about this. I pulled this off the internet. I don't know if this is one of them up there or not, but it's one of yours. What are my unit level economics on an apartment complex? Well, is it a door? Is it a unit or is it a building? I don't know. You can do it any way you want to do it, but what's my rents? What's my loan payments? My property taxes, my insurance, which we were just talking about a minute ago, maintenance fees, management fees. If you can figure out what the variables are at the unit level, if you can make it work there, you can build an empire. If you can't, stop. Fail small, fail quick. Don't waste your time, because time is the one thing, no matter how much money you've got, you can't buy. You can't buy time. We have a finite career. We spend our 20s, out partying, drinking, having a good time. We don't know who the hell we are. We don't know what we want to be when we grow up. We get into our 30s. We start to get it dialed in. We got like 35 years to build our empires. I've built 3 in that time period. And I can tell you that if you waste 10 years trying to figure out how to make something work that isn't going to work, you just wasted 10 years of your life. So dial it in small. Get it working small. If it doesn't work, leave it. Make or break issues. Any business has got make or break issues. So what are my variables? What's my unit level economics? What's the mathematical formula at the unit level? Then I take $1 million in revenue, divide it, take 10 million in revenue, divide it. As I get bigger, I start thinking about pivots and different ways that I can make additional money. Hey, maybe I've got a landscape business. While I'm out there cutting lawns, doing blow and goes all day, maybe I can do a strategic pivot and I can start doing bed mulching, and I can start doing tree trimming, or I can start doing lighting or irrigation repairs, holiday lighting. There's all these different ways I can make money, but I need to figure out what my make or break issues are. If I'm in real estate, I'm going to need a lot of capital. Everybody I know in real estate's got one problem: need more money. That's why you're here. We need capital to buy buildings. We know how to manage them, but we need capital to make it work, right? So quality renters, I need to manage my variable expenses. I tell people, then from there, it's like, okay, what's the wealth proposition? So I figured out I want a business based on needs. I need to get to my unit level economics. I've got my variables I've got to understand to build my mathematical formula. And then I need the wealth proposition. Why am I doing this? Where am I going to make my money? Well, my portfolio will increase in value. My renters will service the debt. That'll create cash flows that gives me some of my base returns every year. And eventually I'm going to sell it. And in real estate, just like in my world, it's all about arbitrage. The price I sell that building for versus the price I paid for it. And that creates my wealth. So understand all of these things. Real estate requires skill. It's great as a side hustle for a lot of people to start. Capital intensity is really high. Operating margins can be skinny, and you can get in trouble fast if you don't know what you're doing. Anybody disagree with that? It takes knowledge. It takes skill. Remind you anybody that we know? That's why he exists. He has the knowledge. We have the capital. We feed him the capital. He does what's all up here on the board. Great deal. I can't leave without talking about buy and build, because buy and build is what I do to make all of my money. In any empire I built, it's a combination of companies. The last company I built was the world's, North America's largest commercial refrigeration and HVAC service company. I bought 23 companies, I put them together. Before that, I built the billion-dollar commercial laundry company. I bought 34 companies, and I put them together. So I want to teach you just a little bit about this. In the world of private equity, because private equity funds only last for 10 years, and they've only got about 5 years once they buy a company to get to about a 4 times multiple of invested capital. My personal career batting average is a 5 times multiple of invested capital. But I got a short period of time to do that. If I buy a bunch of stuff and put it together, it uses OPM as the primary funding source, OPM being other people's money. IRR is time dependent. M&A is very efficient. To grow everything organically takes a long time. If I can buy a bunch of stuff and put it together, I can be very efficient. Requisites got to be fragmented industry. A scalable platform, if I'm putting all these companies together, I'm going to acquire companies, I'm going to integrate them, I'm going to harvest synergies. And so now in about 3 minutes, I'm going to explain to you how $5 trillion in private equity capital really works. at least in my world. So think of this as a pyramid. It's not a pyramid, really. What we got here is we got funds. At the top is like KKR, Carlyle, Blackstone, Apollo, all the big guys. Their funds are 10 billion to 25 billion in size. Down here at under $1 billion, I got a whole bunch of small family offices. I've got a bunch of small PE firms. And so the capital is going back and forth in what I call swim lanes. All of these people model a 3x multiple of invested capital as a return. That's their base return they're looking for. All of these people spend about 6% to 8% of their fund on any one investment. And they have a limit by charter. They can't spend more than 12. So if I'm a big-ass Blackstone fund with 25 billion up here, I can't go down and buy small companies. It'll take me 100 years to put my fund to work. There's not enough. I don't have time. Big firms buy big stuff. Little firms buy little stuff. We good? All swimming around looking for capital, looking for things to buy. So down here at the bottom of the pyramid, just in the United States, I told you 33 million small businesses. 33 million just in our country right down here. But yet I also told you there's only 3,000 companies on the planet up at the top. So big companies, again, 33 million, 3,000. Big companies are rare. There's not a lot of them. And so the multiples people have to pay to buy them go up. So I buy 20, 30 companies down here, put them together, I climb the PE pyramid, I get up here, and then I sell them. And the money that I spent to buy the companies at a low price is now turned into money at a high price, and the arbitrage, or the difference between what I'm buying and putting together and what I'm selling, makes hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. PE is the largest economic force on the planet that isn't a country. Over 5 trillion in assets under management, growing like a weed. 21 years I was the CEO, it went from less than $1 trillion to over 5 trillion. It went from about 800 firms to 6,000 firms. Just keeps on growing. Why? Because it's on average doubling the stock market. Stock market over 30 years averages 8% a year. Private equity averages about 16% a year. So I'm leveraging all of this capital and I'm riding the arbitrage. So here's a last company that I built. 23 companies I bought, average size 2 million in EBITDA. I paid 5 times for each, which is about 10 million. I bought 23, so that means I spent 230 million. The banks would lend me 5 times my EBITDA in debt. I paid 5 times, I could borrow 5 times, therefore I borrowed 230 million from the bank. I used 0 equity. I bought a platform company with private equity that served as the base. Then we bought 23 companies, bolted them on, 100% debt, 230 million invested, and then we sold it for 14 times. And that 46 million of EBITDA that we bought was now worth 644 million. And if you do the math, 644 minus 230 is 414 million of profit for doing nothing other than putting 23 companies together. 5 years. Pretty good return. That's just the M&A stripped out. Also grew the thing 30%, and that included organic growth, margin improvement, all those other things. And it was a cool company where people wanted to work. And I had 3 generations of people working side by side, and we took care of them. So great place to work. People come for life. They bring their friends, and shareholders make a ton of money. Why sell a company once when you can sell it twice? I wrote an article recently for Forbes. I called it the Rule of 130. Rule of 130, it's my creation. If you own a business and you're wondering when is the right time to sell, you take your age plus the percent of your net worth that's tied up in this illiquid thing known as your business, and if it equals more than 130, it's time for you to think about diversification. At least sell a part of your business, if not all. So my personal record is selling the same company 5 times in 13 years and 4 months, just so you know. And I was at the helm for all 5 times. So For every dollar in price, every time I sell a company, I think about it this way. Roll 26 cents forward, take 74 cents home. Give a chunk of that to Darwin so that he can diversify my portfolio, right? Take that 26, get my 4x or 5x multiple of invested capital, 26 cents becomes $1.04. My second check is bigger than my first check. My third check is bigger than the second. My fourth is bigger than the third. My fifth is bigger than the fourth. That math works pretty damn good. And the whole time I'm getting multiple paydays and I'm getting asset diversification as a result of doing it, and I'm mitigating risk. I once looked at buying a company. This was in January of 2020. The price that we were going to pay was a really big number. It was well over $300 million. Person wanted more than we were offering. We said, no, we're disciplined buyers. Guess what happened? The pandemic hit. Guess where their largest source of revenue was coming? From a business that was no longer open. 50% of their earnings disappeared like a fart in the wind. And that business will never sell for the same price ever again. Risky things happen. Planes do fly into buildings. Pandemics happen. Wars happen. All kinds of crazy things happen. The summer of brotherly love happens. Look at what's happening in San Francisco right now. You put all of that together, it's a volatile world that we live in. Bad things do happen to businesses. One of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make is thinking that nothing bad can ever happen to their business. It happens every day, and they're happening more frequently, so we need to be careful. This is a case study. We don't need to get into it, but the first company I bought out of those 23, I paid $16.4 million for a company with $2.7 million in earnings. Implied multiple was 6 times. Person took $12 million off the table, rolled $4.4 million forward. 27 months later, I had bought 7 more companies, sold the company for the first time, 4 times the 4.4 rollover, second check, $17.6 million. Now, this was a guy who, if you gave him the chance, he would have taken 100% of his money off the table because he's the first person to tell you, if I ain't running the business and I'm not the main shareholder, then by God, no one's going to tell me what to do. I've never had a boss before. I'm going home. I want all my marbles. I'm out of here. I talked him into staying, being a rollover investor. His second check was bigger than his first, and it only took 27 months for this person to turn $16 million into $29.6 million. Well, he then semi-retired. He went off and he bought a winery, and he now sends me wine for Christmas every year, and he tells me, Adam, I love you. I believe in you. And now he's got $5 million rolled forward this time, depending on what that multiple winds up being. If it's another 4, add $20 million on top, $49.6 million on a business he would have been totally content selling for $16.4, taking all his marbles and going home. This is what I do. I'm no longer there. I'm still a large investor there, but I'm no longer there. But of those 23 companies that I bought, 21 of the entrepreneurs are still there. And they're all investors. So there's some best practices up here. Really, I'll just tell you, know what good looks like. When you're buying companies, don't buy fixer-uppers. If you're going to write that down, that's one thing to write down. Never buy a fixer-upper. Only buy good companies, companies that lead their markets, that have good reputations, that are just solid. Life is too short for fixer-uppers. If you're buying 20, 30 companies, you cannot afford to have one company go south. I had one company go south on me one time. It took, for 5% of my revenue, it gave me 80% of my headaches for about a 3-year period, and it was only 5% of my revenue. It's like, do not buy a bad company, only buy good companies. That's the big thing. And again, just because you don't have money doesn't mean you can't do acquisitions. I think doing acquisitions is a great way for us to build, I'll call it density in our businesses, to expand into new geographies, to add new strategic capabilities. This is what the big guys are doing on the planet, all the big PE firms, and small business owners and medium-sized business owners can play this game too. We just take a little longer to do it, that's all. So that's it. I write books. You can find them on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. I donate 100% of my royalties to charity, just so you know. That's how I fuel my philanthropic work, is with my book royalties. So any questions, anything I can answer for you?
Mike? Mo. Oh, there.
Thank you first off for coming. Great presentation. Early in your presentation, you talked about productivity and technology, and then you showed like smaller companies that you're buying and trying to combine them to getting economies of scale. I think we're at an inflection point with generative AI, ChatGPT, some of the things out there, and automation technology, which many of these small companies may not have the economies of scale to invest and look into any of these things. So could you maybe just talk to how some of these cutting edge technologies can help, like as you're combining a lot of these small companies that may not be able to build their own large language model, but as a larger company, you can use technology to have a productivity gains, how that plays into the EBITDA multiple that you talked about?
Yeah, our world is changing really, really fast right before our eyes. The technology changes that we've seen in just the last few years are exceptional. I don't write social media posts anymore. I'm using AI in a lot of different things that I do. I still write my books. I did try it though. As I was writing the last book, I took my chapters and I stuck it in and said, give me a better version of this, and what it gave me back was drivel. So there's still some things we do better, but I'll tell you that one of the things that when you create scale, when you put I call it putting clay on a potter's wheel. If I have one small company, I don't have a lot of clay to work with. If I put 23 companies together, I got a whole big pile of clay. Now I can start to think about capital and investments and making strategic investments. And I've always been a strong believer that if I want to drive productivity, then I'm going to invest in technology to do it. And as I'm building an empire, it's growing. As I start to bend the growth curve, I start creating operating leverage, which is the difference between how fast my expenses are scaling and how fast my revenue is growing. And it's amazing to me when done properly what you can accomplish even in a company that's not very sexy like a laundry company. So think of it this way. Back in those days, AI didn't exist, but I used data science. I hired a bunch of data scientists come in. We want to figure out how to set the VEN price of a laundromat. They did work and figured out there were 5 key variables to setting VEN price in a laundromat. And one of them was the unemployment rate, because unemployed people don't do as much laundry as employed people, come to find out. The price of gasoline had a big impact on VEN price. And so there were these 5 statistics. We built 77,000 polynomial regression models, one for every one of the laundromats. Today's technology, you can have variable VEN price, time of day, day of week. So if Saturday morning is the busiest time in the laundry room, you jack up the price, so that people who want to do it Saturday morning are paying for it. And then you lower the price on Tuesday morning when no one's doing laundry and try to get some people to come in and do laundry. So there's all kinds of things that I've been able to accomplish. In 2014, Satya Nadella gave me an award for a company I was building. I was on Microsoft TV commercials. And he was traveling the world with washers and dryers that were cut in half by lasers, and they had cool neon lights. But they were talking about all the cool things we were doing with technology in a non-sexy company that nobody on the world liked, because nobody likes to do laundry. But we all have to do it. So technology to me is just crucial. And I'll tell you, my dad, 70 some odd years old was when he said it. He just recently passed away. He was 90. But he said, I'm going to retire without ever having a computer on my desk. And I will never have a computer on my desk. And then within 2 years, the guy is ordering cars online, and ordering food with DoorDash, and doing all this stuff. And I'm like, Dad, you remember when you said you would never have a computer on your desk? So I would tell you that technology is happening in our lives every day. When it works for us, we embrace it. We don't pay it a second, pay any attention to it. So I would tell you, right now, we need to be paying attention in our businesses because the world's changing really fast right now. And this thing that we're going through. So I always believe in investing millions. So I'm not just a guy who buys a bunch of companies and then rides off with the arbitrage. I put them together. I make investments in them. I invest in technology. I invest in the people. I create the opportunities. I train them. I pay for their MBAs. For the key leaders of my team that need education. And I focus on making a ton of investments, and I get those returns. So it's very important. Anything else? We've been here for a while. I didn't mean to drone on, but I did mean to wander all over the place. So,
any other questions? Okay, I've got a few. I actually had to grab a piece of paper out of the trash to write down. Here's some of the things that I got out of this. Okay. First off, have a cool company to work for. So the corporate culture is extremely important, which is why we're changing what we're doing, looking at a 401k for employees, like he was saying, to keep them around. Hire for what you're going to need for the next 5 years. So hiring, very, very important. Technically, we buy companies. Each one of these apartments is a company. So our unit economics, just like you was talking about, is per unit. When we analyze a property, it's per unit. So we look at everything broken down per unit. So we've got those statistics on everything broken down per unit. Even our new analysis has per unit so that we can go through and say exactly what it's going to be to go ahead and do. On the unit level economics, like one house versus 100 apartments, and then you get economies of scale.
Sure.
The same type of thing. Rather than buying one house, we buy a larger company, which is apartments, which was interesting. He also said not building new companies, but buying them. That's also why we don't build apartments. It takes too long. It's too capital intensive. And there is a great margin there for people that want to take that risk, but it takes too long. So I'd rather use OPM to fix OPM, use other people's money to fix other people's mistakes. And by fixing those mistakes, we create value, which is something I disagreed with a little bit versus companies versus properties. He says, don't buy fixer-uppers. Well, that's where we make most of our money, is by fixing other people's problems and buying those fixer-uppers because we know how to manage them to turn them around. EBITDA. Who doesn't know what that is? Who's brave enough to say that? Okay, EBITDA. Okay, say it. Tell them what it is.
Earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. It's just simply a line on a financial statement. It happens to be the line where companies are valued when they're bought and sold.
For us, that's net operating income. It's our earnings before depreciation, interest expense, taxes on the income, not property taxes, but taxes on the income. So it's same thing for us as net operating income. And we are buying at about a 5 cap now, and a 5 cap would be a 20 multiple. So it's a very similar type of thing, where this is where the arbitrage that I'm trying to figure out how it can work. I like how he said same thing, more clay on the potter's wheel, is the more, we're at a good size. With a few thousand units, we can do a lot. If we had more units, we could do even more. So that's where growing was important for us, and what he inspired me to try and come up with is different ways to get other sponsors to come together. Now, all of you, who's invested in other deals besides mine? Okay, so everybody spreads their money out. You're dealing with other sponsors. If there's some way that we can come together and have more clay on that potter's wheel, then that would be better for all of us. Part of the exit strategy I was thinking about, and you tell me whether this holds water or not, is we're buying at a 5 cap on a certain size, and you've got a whole lot of buyers there. And as you go up that pyramid, let me go back to your pyramid real quick.
I would also say that different industries trade at different multiples.
Yes,
what holds true is the fact that bigger sells for higher, and arbitrage is there in any industry. But you put a SaaS software company on this, you'd start at about a 15 handle down here at the bottom, and then you'd work your way up.
Here's the question. If we're at this size here, let's just say we're here.
Yep.
And as we grow larger, part of the exit strategy was, hey, can we take this public? Rather than going from a 5 cap, can we go at a price per share and having that liquidity? Would the overall value of a larger company taking it public into a REIT or a private REIT, would that then add additional value to the whole than the individual components?
Yes.
So that's part of the goal there, is we're saying, hey, we want to be 5,000 units, 10,000 units. I don't even know how many units, but we want as big as we can so that we can take that public, so that we have larger people that we attract that there's only so many companies out there they can do. And just like he said, you're buying talent, you're buying a successful company. And he didn't say it because he's the talent that they bring in, but you also are buying the team there. You're not just buying a company, but you're buying a team usually.
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So that's the same type of thing. If we can somehow figure out a way to merge other sponsors in and have each one of those with their own specialty. For example, one might be an expert in construction, so construction management that can take ours and theirs together, or property management, or human resources, or one of the guys I'm talking to as far as doing a merger on that is brilliant on the financial side of it as far as dealing with big PE firms, things like that. Another guy is great at asset management. So those are things that we want to do to establish that. Not building, by existing. They put 6 to 8% into each deal. And I think that's true for all private equity firms, right? As far as even the ones that invest in real estate.
So real estates are always different, but yes, and if depending on the size, depends the size projects that they're investing in. But generally speaking, they want enough asset diversification in a portfolio so that if you have one bad apple, which they usually would, you have an ability to overcome it through the diversification. So most funds actually have written into their prospectus or their charter, we can't invest more than 12% in any one investment. And the typical is 6 to 8. And then potentially they need to invest a little bit more while they're fixing it up.
Exactly. Here, hold on a second. I got something to add to that, but
I was just saying, you were talking about a fragmented market. So, that's what you buy into. How are you going to do this? Say, what's our fragmented market that you're trying to combine and pull together?
the fragmented market is individual sponsors, just like the idiot that just lost $80 million that I told you about last time. It was actually in the Wall Street Journal. It was a national news story. So there are a lot of people like that. They're all small companies. That's really what they are. All these sponsors like me, and most of them have not been around for very long and have not seen a down market, which is why they're getting slammed, is they didn't put those protections in there. Whereas if we come together, we can have our experience bringing it to the smaller sponsors to go ahead and help all of their investors out as well.
So you have a bunch of different kinds of fragmentation in real estate. You've got highly fragmented property management companies, tens of thousands of them all over the place. You've got fragmentation in that every building is unique and different. And as you said, each building is like buying a company. So there is tons of fragmentation in terms of product and then market diversity. And then you have companies like yours, which is again highly fragmented. There's a bunch of real estate investment companies that are collecting capital from people and then investing it in portfolios. Ton of fragmentation.
Sir.
So this might not be the right market time to do this, but why wouldn't you want to take a large asset of yours, find 3 other large assets owned by other companies, bundle those together, and then sell those to the higher
Okay, the same thing that you're saying is those buyers that are buying up at the top, they're buying existing companies that are performing well. Think about it this way. It's a Class A property, 100% occupied and performing. That's what insurance companies are looking for. That's what the big hedge funds are looking for, because they want something that's already performing. They don't have the maneuverability to go in there and fix something up. That's for somebody else. So our niche is fixing those up, adding that value, and then selling to somebody else. But if we can think a little bit bigger and say, let's build that up, do that same thing, and get all of these properties performing at a top level, that might attract bigger buyers who want the talent pool, not just the properties that are performing in the cash flow, but the talent pool in the company that's taking care of it. Selling a larger package that's not just our properties, but along with everybody else's together. So that's where we're trying to figure out how to do this. He's doing Empire Builders, and they're taking companies, and like you said, can I say the same thing that J2 says about you?
You can say whatever you want.
Okay. I don't think he said he was offered $77 million to go take over a company. He said, no, I'm having too much fun doing what I'm doing. Okay. So he's already made a lot of money. So now he's here doing things like this to help people out rather than the big PE companies. So he's here helping coach me on what to do, along with a lot of other companies. So this is all part of his give back. So by the way, let me go ahead and plug those. By the way, everybody should go online and order his books. I'm going to go ahead and say this real quick too, is let's start doing this just to tell you what I'm reading. I just finished, damn it, I don't remember the name. Discussions with a Bullfrog. I think that's what it was. And you know who the bullfrog is?
No.
Okay, the bullfrog is the oldest living active seal. Okay, so seal leader or whatever it is. And so I forget this guy's name. He's actually retired. He was the bullfrog. He was the head frogman. He was the head seal. It's a book that he wrote about, and he's wrote 5 or 6 books. And great regarding leadership and business, but same thing here. So which one should we read first of these two?
Are you a business owner?
Business owners?
Anybody who owns businesses, I would tell you my first book became a cult classic. It'll hit 1 million copies sold this year. And it's just become a cult classic for business owners who someday, 50% of all companies bought and sold on the planet are bought and sold to private equity. And whenever I'm teaching a seminar, I'll give a 10-question quiz and 90% of the room will flunk it miserably. Nobody understands how private equity really works. It's a term you've heard, but if they give you a basic quiz, you fail. So this helps you understand who are the people that are calling and trying to buy my business. Why should I do that? If I also have a business, remember only 50% of the companies are sold to private equity. That means 50% are going somewhere else. This book covers the 100% of buyers. How, as an entrepreneur with a business, you determine who to sell to and how to run through what does that process look like, who's the team of professionals you need to assemble in order to get the best outcome. Biggest mistake I see business owners make is they think somehow that the expertise they have in building a business somehow makes them an expert at selling a business. It doesn't. You're selling a business for the first time, you're a novice. And so I've bought and sold many companies, and this is to help entrepreneurs understand that process and learn how to level the playing field. Because on the other side of the table is the world's most sophisticated investors on the planet. And if you don't know what you're doing, they are sharks. They will take advantage of you. I never did. I was always a good person, and I tried to be fair to people. But I could see mistakes being made left and right where the seller never knows the mistakes they made because they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. But the trailing liabilities that they assumed because 5 words were changed in an indemnification clause because their lawyer was incompetent and was not a business attorney. How many people go to their dentist for brain surgery? Okay, we all get that when it comes to medicine. We want the best care we can get. We go to specialists when we need specialists. Why do people use generalists when they're selling the biggest asset that they own? So that's what this book's about.
Which is also why we hire real estate brokers to buy and sell on our properties. They know how to sell those. So I'm going to read this one this month. So if anybody else wants to read it at the same time, then go ahead and order it. We can discuss it at some other time. And then we'll do exit strategy. And the one that he's got coming out soon, we'll do that one as well.
Starting Darwin's book club?
Yeah, well, yeah, I can't commit to anything there because follow-up kind of sucks sometimes when it comes to things like that. But I read that first one, Bullfrog. I got to look up the name of it. We'll send that out. But let's read Private Equity Playbook this month as well. I try and read a business book, a religious book, and a fun book every month. So is what I try and do. I'm not always going to, as long as I'm here. You got to read this one too. And if you want a free copy of it, you can have it. So any other questions for Adam?
I didn't hear thunder out there. I didn't hear, broken glass and hail, so I think we survived.
So this is not the first time I've heard about. You've got all these businesses there. You've got all these retirees, both in like this is the peak retirement year, I think 2023. But we've got so many people leaving, and the pandemic made it worse. So you got all these businesses are being sold too. What areas do you see being like where there's either the most opportunity or just the most in terms of heuristics, where you've got these great businesses that are just going to evaporate if someone doesn't buy them?
So here's another sad statistic. 80% of all businesses that try to sell fail to sell. They just can't find a buyer. There's a ton of opportunity literally everywhere right now with baby boomers retiring. Huge shortages in a lot of different industries. We're short several 100,000 tradespeople, electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians. It's like they're all retiring, and we haven't been sending kids to trade school for decades, and so we have a huge shortage of airline pilots, right now too. So again, I'll go back to I focus on needs. I tend to like service companies because they're low capital intensity. If I want to build a $10 million service company, 10 million revenue, I'll probably need $1 million worth of capital, and that's it. And so they're low capital intensity, they're high cash flow, and if I focus on needs and not wants, and again, these businesses aren't sexy. I built a large commercial laundry company, laundromats, common area laundry rooms in apartment complexes, HVAC service company. These are not sexy, but like Warren says, it's like invest in what you know. And you don't need to recreate the wheel or do something new and special. There's a lot of these great little businesses out there. Any business you can think of, that's highly fragmented, that focuses on needs, is a potential to do this. Many billion-dollar landscape maintenance companies have been built in the last 20 years. People mowing lawns, multiple, and it's still a highly fragmented, still plenty of room for people to do that one again. But everywhere, the world's largest veterinarian company is a PE-backed roll-up, that bought thousands, of veterinarian clinics. The largest dental company in the United States was buying hundreds of dental practices every year and putting them together. You can do this in any industry, and fragmentation is the key.
And a good example of that may be Wayne Huizinga, which everybody's heard. Has anybody heard of him?
Waste management.
And Blockbuster Video. And he actually didn't start Blockbuster. He was actually looking at Blockbuster and Hollywood Video. And he ended up buying Blockbuster because Hollywood Video actually had porn also, and he didn't want to have any involvement in that. So he bought Blockbuster and took that. There's great stories about how he grew Blockbuster, and on the real estate side, he could open a store with zero money because of how they structured leases, which is great with how real estate works. And that's a really fun separate story, but that's neither here nor there. Any more questions for Adam before we let him go and get back home? Going. Thank you so much for coming on, Adam. I appreciate it very much.
Good to be here.
Thank you. And like I said,
everybody.
He's helping guide and coach us a little bit, so hopefully we can grow, and someday I could grow up and be like Adam. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions on anything else regarding what we're doing? Yes, ma'am. Last month, I mentioned the possibility of selling 1019. We had a BOV done on that. We're looking at the possibility of doing that. We'll also have a BOV going out to look at selling Riverbend. We've owned that one about 6 years now, and so we'll see what that looks like as well. So we always explore these to see where we are on the market, just to go ahead and keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on. Most of the other ones are not. Thank you so much.
I am going to.
Yeah, he's going to run out.
Take care.
And to give you a couple other updates, Lakeside, we're actually getting close to being able to do distributions on Lakeside. And that has been a long time coming. We've had a lot of extra struggles with that. Our CapEx budget was kind of shot because of the city, crawling up our rear and wanting more and more and more and more done. So that's a challenge that we have. Similarly, the one losing deal that we had, Serrano Ranch, was because we bought it in 2009. All buildings stopped. Cities had inspectors that had to stay busy, so they crawled up the rear of anybody who was still doing work. And that's kind of what's happened at Lakeside a little bit. Not quite as bad, but now we are prepared, learn lessons from what we've done before, and overcapitalize, so we're in good position on that. Amber Trails, those two properties, we are not doing distributions yet. We're still working on those. Those were bought right at the top, so we're still working through those, so no distributions going on that. One of the struggles we're having is this office building. Just like he was talking about, offices, people are moving out of. We've had a lot of people move out, so we're actually cutting distributions on this property. Frankfurt, we're getting close to being able to do some more distributions. But again, for those of you who remember being in Frankfurt, that when we refinanced, we paid off a $7 million note. And in doing that, we have money that's going back to getting paid to those partners every month. But that also negated any other distributions for the time being for the partners that are in on that. But we're getting close to being able to do something on that. Not quite yet. Other property updates? Anything we need to throw out?
You talked about putting together a fund to capture distressed assets when the bridge bubble collapsed. Do you have any update on
Update on the bridge bubble. We are still early. I was having a conversation with Paul Peebles just a couple nights ago again, and there's a lot of fear because of the Jay Gavinelli, how do you say it? Applewood, and a lot of fallout from that. That was the largest one, but there's still a lot of them going on. Ironically enough, I got a call from, I sent that over to a good friend of mine who sells yachts in California, and he invested in an apartment property in Phoenix. And he's like, I'm in that position now. He invested $50,000. He doesn't make much money. He does well, but I mean, $50,000 is a lot to him. And they said, okay, we either have to do a cash call for the same amount of money you already put in, or so that we can then refinance, take an $18 million note to a $14 million note because they put $4 million down, or they need to go ahead and walk away, or they get private equity to come in that would go ahead of all of their money, which is probably my guess. I don't know anything about anything regarding this particular property. My guess is the route they'll end up going. But I did tell him, and this would go against me, because I told him, here's what I would tell him, is the sponsor put in $3 million into that deal, and they raised another $2 million. I would tell him, if you're going to do the private equity is paid back first. You need to say that the investors get paid back second, then the sponsor, which is the same thing that I would be doing. So the sponsor has to step up and take whatever losses are first and make sure investors are paid back first. And that's something that we've always done, is we've written off if we have any problems. We didn't take anything. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, ideas? We are in good shape on all the properties because of how we structured our debt. We're not don't have any of those risks because of long term. You know what? I haven't thought this out. So I probably shouldn't do anything.
Don't do anything then if you haven't thought it out. If you haven't thought it out, don't do anything. Just no, don't do it. I'm going to override you. Okay, don't do anything. No, don't encourage him. He'll do it. Don't do it.
I'm going to do it.
Oh, thank you, Tracy.
Okay. Thank you, Tracy, encouraging me. I have no idea where this is going, so hopefully I don't end up sticking my foot in my mouth. Market goes up and down, right? Like we were showing that cyclical, the market goes up and down. Interest rates, well, have been going up, but they do go up and down over time. Over the long haul, you've got this whole, the property values go like that, right? You've got interest rates that go like that. You've got something else that goes like, so you don't know where you're going to be on that map, on whatever time frame is. But when you're analyzing a deal, if you're using variable rate loans, that you find a place where you're going to buy, wherever that intersection may be. If you're buying with a variable rate loan, you're at risk for whatever that loan might do. When you're buying with the fixed rate loan, you know that you're there and you know you're going to have some stability in what that is. So you buy, so no matter where you are in the market, you buy with what works right now, okay? And then you don't put yourself at risk for whatever might happen. For example, property values right now are down. They're down overall about 20%, I would say. Is that a good 20 to 30% maybe? But cash flow only dips a little bit, okay? So it's harder to sell right now, but because where you buy, you may have it make sense wherever you buy in that intersection today. For example, I looked at a property today. I analyzed a property. It had great cash flow. But when I put in that higher exit cap rate on the exit, the overall yield, we were talking about 6% per year cash flow, starting year one. That is great. We haven't seen 6% cash flow year one in years. But the overall, in my analysis, was only showing an 8 to 10% per year average annual return because of where I put this exit cap rate, put the value of the property only here. Whereas realistically, that value should be up here. Okay, go back to 2010, 11, 12. Who wishes they would have bought then? Okay, everybody. Here's the reason I didn't buy more. I didn't buy more because they didn't make sense cash flow wise. I was buying here, making sure that they were good long term. Whereas I would say more naive people or people that haven't been stung were saying, oh, the values are going to go way up. Well, they did, and they were heroes. So you have to buy making sense now so that you can ride through whatever the problem is. But even on that deal with 6% cash flow per year and having an exit that I'm only showing a 10% per year average annual return, I think my value is very low because things are on sale now. I think that value is going to be much, much higher than what my analysis is. So going back to 2010, 11, 12, I only bought for cash flow. If it wasn't cash flowing, I said, no, this isn't going to work, when I should have been buying for appreciation at that time. Right now is one of those times that if you can buy for cash flow, great, because I think the values are going to go way up. Everything's on sale. If it makes sense now, we buy it. So that's what we're going to be doing, is looking a little more aggressively at those. I still think we're a little bit early, but we need to start looking because a lot of these loans are going to be start to hit over the next year. And that's when we're going to see a lot more blood in the water. So to answer your question, I was not doing a fund because most people don't like funds. They want to see what they're investing in. So we want to go ahead and do that same type of thing. Put together opportunities that we can jump on, keep your powder dry, don't invest in a bunch of stupid crap, and be available for when these opportunities come, because there will be some big opportunities that you won't necessarily be able to see 5 years down the road like you couldn't in 2010. And everybody was scared in 2010. They didn't know what was going to happen, but it went through the freaking roof. Okay? So if you're buying to know that you can ride out any downturn, then you're okay because you're hoping for an upturn, but you're safe where you are, but you're hoping for the big hit. So
let me piggyback on that safety, because I think it's critical. I get calls weekly, if not daily sometimes. When are we going to buy something? When are we going to put something else out? Particularly for those of you who are not accredited investors. And so my typical answer is we're looking at things, okay? And though we are looking at things, it's kind of I'm kind of hedging the answer, is that we're looking at things, we're just not finding very much right now. There's a term in both the stock market and just about any commodity market. It's called capitulation, and we have not seen any capitulation yet. We are seeing sellers who are still being very stubborn about their prices, both from the standpoint that they can ride out this low period in the market, and because they're not pressed on their debt. Okay, so overall, we haven't seen any capitulation where prices just plummet, and then those that do have the opportunity funds, as you asked, can step in and start buying. That, as Darwin said, we're still early. When that bridge debt bubble finally starts to burst, that's when you're going to see the capitulation. Because what's happened is that not only values have gone down, but, and I'll try to make this brief, but I'll try to describe. So when the agency debt started to go away about 3 years ago, meaning that they were not loaning as many dollars per property, that's when the bridge lenders stepped in and says, oh, you know what, we'll give you 80 cents on the dollar, sometimes as much as 82 cents a dollar, when the agency debt was at like 65 cents on the dollar. Big delta there. So now they were borrowing more, and these bridge debt were generally 2 to 3 years tops, and they were betting on being able to get the property, turn it around, get it refinanced, and then having nice.
one more thing to add on the bridge loans is Fannie Mae would only, or agency will only lend a certain amount because they base it on historical. What is the value right now based on the T12? Bridge lenders were loaning on future value.
Right.
And so they were looking at that same upward curve and saying, we're going to loan based on what it's going to be worth in 3 years. Well, that didn't happen. Values went down. So that's why all of them are getting crunched, because they were buying it on
the bubble is going to come when the terms on these bridge loans start to mature. Now, you own a property that you borrowed $10 million on, where Fannie would have only given you, say, $7 million on it, and interest rates were lower. Now you've got to go and refinance that debt at a much higher interest rate, and the bridge debt is pretty much gone away. I mean, there's no more bridge lenders out there. So what are your options? You've got to go back to agency, or you go to traditional bank, which are fully recourse. And so now you will be borrowing at a higher interest rate with lower loan dollars. So now you've got a $10 million loan that you've got to repay or restructure, but you'll only be able to get, say, $7 million for it. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't values come down 20 to 30%? Oh, sorry, we're not going to give you 7 this time. We'll give you 6 this time, or maybe 5.5. That's what's going to pressure everybody, and that's at that point when the bubble bursts, because they will not be able to go into the market and refinance that debt. And that's when we'll hopefully be in a position to start to rake in the good deals.
Adam told you this story. I don't know if you read it about it in the paper. Also, like you said, the 2 biggest hotels in San Francisco gave the keys back. That was $1.5 billion in loans right there that they gave back just on those 2 hotels. There's going to be more of that they're going to be, hey, we can't raise the money, like my friend's deal in Phoenix that I was talking about. You know, it's worth less than what they have invested in it. They've got to put more money into it to save it. But now they're saying, hey, people don't want to put more money in to save the deal to hope to become even in 2 to 3, 4, 5 years. They would rather let a private equity step in there ahead of them in the hopes of getting something back, which the odds are that isn't going to happen. So a lot of these, the sponsors are sticking their head in the sand and just hoping and praying. And I think he was saying hope is not a tactic. That is not something you can count on. So those are going to fail. And once they finally say, okay, you know what? We don't have any choice but to give the keys back. Because on non-recourse loans, which most of our loans are non-recourse, meaning there's no personal liability, except for what they call bad boy clawbacks. So we guarantee the loan. So I'm a guarantor or a KP on non-recourse loans. Thank you. However, if the property files bankruptcy, now it's personally guaranteed. If there's fraud, misrepresentation, theft, anything like that, it goes back to recourse. So it is better for a KP to just give the keys back than to fight any of that. And all that does is that takes those sponsors, that kills them from ever doing another deal. Because if I walk away from a deal that you've got money invested in, you'll never invest with me again.
And the lenders won't loan you any money.
And the lenders won't loan you any money, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, but that's where it's going to end up. And that's how bad it has to get before they start giving the keys back, or before they turn around and say, you know what, we're going to lose everything anyway, so just take over the note and give us pennies on the dollar. And that will end up happening, so that there's not as a sponsor, I can say, let's just say we have a $20 million property with a $15 million loan, and the value goes down to $15 million. If I just give the keys back, I lose the investor's money, and I have a bad reputation with the lender. The only saving grace that I can have is selling that for pennies on the dollar to keep the loan in place. Investors still lose out, but I still have the ability to go borrow money for another deal. Okay, so it's a bad situation for everybody, but that would allow somebody else to come in and take over that loan at some point in time, rather than just giving it back to the bank. It's the ones like Jay that stuck his head in the sand and didn't communicate with his partners and let all that happen, where the problem was.
And there was a little bit of fraud there. He just got sued.
There was a lot of stuff.
Well, it's getting late, but I will close with one thing here on this, and this brings it back home to our portfolio. So I get another round of questions weekly, and that is about distributions, whether either postponed or have stopped. And what I ask you as the investor relations director, and whatever the other hats I wear, which are irrelevant, but more to the point, is this: the market right now is in major flux. Nobody in here has not, unless you've been living under a rock, which everybody here probably hasn't, right? It's safe to say. Inflation has hit us in so many areas. We mentioned a couple of them. Insurance rates, taxes, but it's not only that, and Vicki can attest to that. Our payrolls have gone up exponentially, expenses all the way across the board. But why am I saying all this? I'm saying all this because there are some of our investors who are expecting that the property should continue to perform the way they performed 2 years ago or 3 years ago, when these expenses were not as high, when interest rates were not as high. But all of these headwinds, all of these inflationary issues have impacted the portfolio and individual properties. And so therefore, I would ask to understand that it's not that we don't want to make distributions. We have to protect the asset. Okay, as the old saying goes, don't talk to me about a return on my money until you talk to me about the return of my money. So by us keeping what little cash flow back for reserves protects that asset. Okay, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, and you'll probably hear me say it countless of other times until things change. And that is, I would rather protect that asset than send someone $100, $150. And I don't believe anybody in here, it will change their life to receive that extra $100, $150 on a property when collectively all of those $100 to $150 can be held in reserve to protect the asset. Okay. Taxes keep going up, everything's going up, and I'm hoping at some point in time inflation does go away, and I'm hoping the prices do come down, although we don't know. I mean, obviously, the future is something we can't predict, but even things as simple as one of my favorite places to eat, Whataburger. Who likes Whataburger in here, right? Everybody likes Whataburger. Have you seen the cost of a number one, which is their combo? Yeah, it's fast approaching $10. $10. So my question to myself all the time is, when inflation does go away, are they going to bring it back down to about $6? Right? So if that's the case, our insurance rate's going to come back down from $1,200, $1,300, $1,500 back to our $750, $850. Probably not. Our employees on our properties who have to feed their families, are they going to say, hey, Darkor, thank you so much for keeping me employed, but now that inflation's come down some, you don't have to pay me as much anymore? None of that is going to happen. And so I'm saying it almost preemptively to tell you that don't expect this hangover to go away overnight. It will be with us, and there's that saying about survive to 25. We believe in 25 things will start to kind of level out and become much more normal, as if you use that term. But my overall message is, and thank you for indulging me, is be level-headed about your expectations on what the performance of the properties are right now, because we are in a real critical period of time where inflation has just run away on every level, and these properties are businesses. They have line items that keep exploding on the expense side of things, and until we can impact the properties directly, which it's hard to do when we can't control what taxes are, what insurance are, what utilities are. Until that happens, expect more of the same is all I'm saying, and have some patience. And those of you who've been with us for a long time and have made a lot of money with us, you understand that it's not that we don't want to deliver, is that we have to protect the asset first. If we don't protect the asset, there won't be a return on your money, and there may not be a return of your money. So we have to protect it. With that, thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and look to be back here. What is the second Tuesday of July? We will. The 11th? Okay. All right, so we'll be back here on the 11th.